All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a really calm, forensic look at a frankly fascinating breakdown of corporate sabotage. We usually expect the biggest threats to a company to look like some dramatic boardroom shouting match or maybe a massive cyber attack, right? Well, not this time. This time, the threat arrived quietly. It was disguised as a completely mundane, totally forgettable office document. So, we are breaking down the anatomy of a cover-up. We're going to analyze the events of the last shortcut they tried and see exactly how an everyday administrative request got weaponized to pull off a massive institutional erasure. Let's get into it.
The shortcut looked harmless because it was labeled temporary. I mean, just think about that for a second. That word, temporary, it has fooled countless offices before. It's such a brilliant hook from the source material, and it really sets this mood of slow burn suspense. Because honestly, when a rule is broken permanently, people notice. It causes a scene. But when a rule takes a quick, temporary pause, people tend to just look the other way. Well, throughout this explainer, we're going to see exactly how a team of incredibly sharp employees absolutely refused to look the other way and instead relied on the unblinking truth of the institutional record.
So Chapter 1, the harmless, temporary shortcut. Okay, to really understand the threat here, we first have to understand what was actually being threatened, which was the memory charter. This was a brand new system of controls designed specifically to ensure accountability and truth in corporate records. But, as we all know, reform isn't tested by the shiny signing ceremony, is it? It's tested by the first object that nobody really wants to explain. And here is that exact object, a temporary exception memo. It's a seemingly boring administrative request that very quietly paused 3 crucial memory charter security controls during a standard system migration. And that's the thing. The most dangerous corporate documents literally never look dangerous at first glance. They just look like routine paperwork sitting on a polished desk in the morning light. The memo's power relies entirely on its ability to just bore people into not asking questions.
Moving on to Chapter 2, Reading the Fine Print.
So what actually happens when someone finally bothers to read that fine print? Well, Transformation Officer Adrian Vale and the executives who were pushing this memo used some highly polished buzzwords. They threw around terms like alignment, healing, and business continuity, basically arguing that the controls had to be paused to prevent operational disruption. Which sounds incredibly reasonable, right? But the harsh system reality was a total, unmitigated 48-hour pause on all security controls. They used soft words to make the company's records softer, masking a massive vulnerability right behind the comforting, corporate language of progress. Which leads us to this absolutely piercing question. Can we define who changed it, when it changed, and who approved the change? This comes from Sophia Lane, a new operations coordinator. Now, Sophia is new enough that she actually still reads the metadata, the routing notes, and all that fine print that experienced people have just naturally learned to skip over. She hasn't yet learned which questions upper management considers inconvenient, So her fresh eyes cut right through all the buzzwords, prompting the exact questions that begin to shake the foundation of this so-called temporary shortcut.
Which brings us to Chapter 3, Mapping the Evidence.
Sophia's questions sparked a quiet, strictly background investigation led by strategy lead Maya Carter. And Maya is brilliant here because she understands that you don't chase people, you follow systems. People will deny things all day long, but systems simply record. Her proof map is wonderfully methodical. Action, owner, timestamp, beneficiary. She knows that when you place the right records in a strict chronological sequence, they start speaking long before anyone actually confesses. This structured mapping gives her team a clean, direct path from the action right to the owner, cutting perfectly through Adrian Vale's gentle warnings and frankly condescending career advice that was meant to pressure them into dropping the whole thing.
But Maya isn't working alone here. Executive Assistant Nina Ross steps in, and she knows that background work always creates foreground records. We're talking calendar exports, room booking records, draft notes, routing trails, printed receipts. People in power so often treat administrative tasks as completely invisible, forgetting that invisible work actually sees everything. By pulling these totally mundane items, Nina manages to place this isolated temporary memo inside a much larger and completely undeniable pattern.
All right, Chapter 4, The Real Motive Revealed.
So, the background evidence is set. The map is drawn. It's time to bring in the raw, uneditable IT data. This right here is the true aha moment. And it was discovered by IT audit specialist Jordan Price. Jordan didn't bring in some cinematic Hollywood hacker visuals. No, he brought sequence. Look at this. At hour 0, the system migration window opens, completely pausing the security controls. Jump to hour 24, and a scheduled evidence purge is initiated right out of the old executive cleanup queue. And then, by hour 48, the security controls magically resume. This completely destroys the official narrative. That 48-hour operational pause had absolutely nothing to do with business continuity. It perfectly overlapped with a highly targeted purge of executive evidence. I mean, the logs just don't lie.
So, with the logs fully on the table, analyst Aisha Morgan asked the one question that makes the entire boardroom instantly smaller. Who benefits if this stays classified as a harmless error? When the formal review inevitably becomes pure theater, when executives try to soften verbs and rename choices just to protect the company's optics, Aisha forces them to actually name the real beneficiary. She cuts right through the fog. Because, as HR manager Linda Park realizes during this, procedure can no longer be used as a hiding place.
Finally, Chapter 5, Fixing the Broken System.
Once the truth is exposed, the very next step is absolutely crucial. Because, let's be real, uncovering a cover-up is only half the battle. Maya flat out refuses a private fix. Private fixes do nothing but make executives comfortable while leaving future employees completely exposed to the exact same risks. Instead, independent board member Elise Warren comes in and implements a permanent institutional fix. They block the 48-hour pause entirely. They replace the migration lead, and most importantly, they require the memory charter reform controls to run in parallel during all future system transitions. They literally hard-coded the lesson directly into the process, leaving permanent footprints so this specific shortcut can literally never be abused again.
Which brings us to the core takeaway of this entire investigation. I really want to let this settle for a moment. Temporary shortcuts become permanent culture when nobody asks who benefits from the pause. It's just a powerful reminder that corporate rot doesn't usually happen in one giant dramatic sweep. It happens in the quiet 48-hour gaps. It happens in the exceptions. It happens exactly when efficiency becomes erasure.
So I want to leave you with a provocative thought to consider today. Look around your own workplace. Who actually benefits when the rules take a temporary pause? The next time you see a harmless-looking exception memo cross your desk, I want you to remember Sophia, Maya, and the lessons from this explainer. The record doesn't ever need to raise its voice. It simply waits for someone patient enough to read it. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep asking the right questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.